What's going on YouTube? Welcome back to the channel and thank you all for tuning in. I really appreciate it. Today we're going to do our Unadilla preview and get into a few good juicy topics in the moto world. Starting with Jett and his controversial one-lap penalty after jumping the gate at Ironman, and Jett even had some choice words for the AMA. But that was last weekend. In regards to this weekend at Unadilla, we're going to get a couple of big names back like Kenny Roczen and Ty Masterpool. And on top of that, we're even going to have a rookie straight from Loretta Lynn's and the Combines getting his feet wet for the first time in pro motocross. But unfortunately, on a negative note, we've also lost one of the biggest stars in the sport and the dude who's given the biggest challenge to Jett. And then with 2 rounds to go, we've got at least one, maybe even 2 championships that look set to wrap up at Unadilla. And speaking of point standings, we'll dive into the Super Motocross World Championship playoff points and talk about some massive battles to try to get into that top 20 to get directly seeded. And then we'll jump into a little bit of info about a Thursday night national, the Night of Champions, for a pro privateer race, an opportunity for some big money up in the Unadilla area. And then last but not least, I'll give you the new entries for the weekend and we'll preview the absolutely gnarls Barkley mental conditions that Unadilla has to offer. And for the track preview, I've got some GoPro POV footage from last year's qualifying practice, where I had the very bold strategy of attempting to ride the most rutted track on the circuit with an absolutely disintegrated knee. Not a good idea, but you know what they say, hindsight's 50-50 or something like that. But those are all the things that we'll get into in today's video, and before I do, gotta give a huge thank you to my channel sponsors. Thank you to ASV Inventions and Sirius Studio. I have links and discount codes in my video description, and guys, remember, if you're supporting them, you're supporting me. Let's get into the video. To start off, we'll dive a little bit more into the drama from Ironman, and that being Jett and his one-lap penalty after jumping the gate. And in my Ironman post-race video, I made a bit of a mistake. I thought that hitting the gate or jumping it was an automatic penalty and that there was no discretion involved, but I failed to see that the word may was included. And before I saw the word may, I actually agreed with the penalty completely and thought they followed the rule book to a T. But after seeing that the word may is in the rule and that they're allowed to use discretion, my personal opinion is 1 whole lap was way too harsh. I get that rules are rules, but if discretion's involved, I think the punishment could have fit the crime just a little bit better. But from what I've been told, what you see in this picture is pretty much what got Jett pinched. Everybody else's gates have just fallen, they haven't even crossed over him yet, and Jett is already over the gate with his gate flipped over forwards. And actually, if you look back and watch the video, he bounces the gate and he doesn't really check up or anything. He has a little bit of an issue getting over the flipped over gate, but besides that, he tried going into turn 1 in as high of a position as possible. And this stuff all happened so damn fast, I am by no means saying that this was malicious intent from Jett, but had he backed off and waited a little bit, I do believe that the punishment would have at least been lessened. And while we're on the topic of malicious intent, that's kind of what I thought the whole one-lap penalty was even for. I thought that was for guys like my boy Heath Harrison that are trying to jump over the gate, not for people that make mistakes. But regardless of all opinions, the penalty was dished out and Jett was docked 1 whole lap. And needless to say, both Jett and HRC Honda were absolutely furious with the penalty. In a post-race statement, Jett was quoted as saying, "Obviously, there was an incident in the first moto, which in my mind is kind of silly because I feel like the AMA has double standards. We've got guys cutting the track and they don't do anything, and that one seems to be a direct shot at Deegan, no choice. I guess this is what we have to deal with, but they might need to get better at realizing who they need to penalize. I came back and won the second moto, so we'll leave it at that." Now those are Jett's words, but HRC team manager Lars Lindstrom has echoed similar sentiments in all the post-race interviews. So at the end of the day, I think it's safe to say that nobody from the AMA is going to be getting a Christmas card from HRC Honda or the Lawrences. But that's racing, we got rules, and unfortunately, sometimes we have penalties. And let's be real, Jett's going to live to win another day, and that day will probably be this Saturday. But that was last weekend. Headed into this weekend, we're going to have some new faces, with the biggest name being the 94 of Kickstart Kenny. And how sick is this going to be? Total surprise. Dude just comes out on Instagram and says, "Screw it, I'll be at Dilla, see you there." And I think the sole reason is the fact that the Super Motocross World Championship playoffs are coming up. The dude could use some points in the seeding. And of course, nothing gets you more ready to go racing than to go racing. So it's definitely going to be sick to have Kickstart Kenny back on the gate. And how do we think he's going to do? The dude hasn't raced since before the end of Supercross, and as far as I know, he hasn't even been on the bike that long, so I'm thinking it would be super impressive if Kenny came out and was in the top 5, but really, I'm thinking somewhere between 5 and 8 is a little bit of a safer bet. But it's Kenny friggin' Roczen, you never know. When he returned to the series last year at the same track, it may not have gone to plan, but 2 years ago, he returned at High Point out of the blue and was pretty much the closest person to challenging Jett Lawrence for a win for the entire first half of the season. Up next on the list of returns, well, at least I hope so, and I think so. Andy's on the entry list, but you never know, it's Ty Masterpool. And man, has Ty had a rough year. He gets that elusive spot on the Pro Circuit team full time, but then goes out with injury in his first Supercross of the year. But it was nothing crazy, and we never saw him for the rest of the Supercross season, so one would think that he should have been extra prepared for Pro Motocross, but that really hasn't been the case either. But tons of bad motos, late moto fades, and even rumors of sickness have kept Mitch Payton's 300th winner for the Pro Circuit Kawasaki team from realizing his true potential this summer. But he's slated to be back this weekend, and if the rumors are true about Mitch Payton re-signing Garrett Marchbanks, then unfortunately for Ty, these final 3 Pro Motocross races will be the last race of his Pro Circuit Kawasaki career. And we got one more incoming rider, and that's going to be the rookie Rockstar Husqvarna rider of Landon Gibson. He's been great at the combines this year, should have had a 1-1 at Redbud until he revved himself into submission. He won the second moto of the Ironman Combine. He had good results in Supercross Futures, but on the contrary, he was kind of on the struggle bus at Loretta Lynn's. Never quite showed what he was made of, but I think Landon Gibson is going to be a Lux Turner on steroids, and what I mean by that is he'll be way better of a pro than he was an amateur. He might only be 16 years old, but the kid's in shape, he thrives when the track's rough and gnarly, and that's pro motocross for you. Not too sure what to expect out of Landon Gibson this weekend. I think a couple of top 15s would probably be a pretty successful weekend. But stay tuned to this kid for the future. My guy Daniel Blair knows how to scout him, and he says Landon Gibson will be a future champion. And on the flip side, as awesome as it is that we have new names joining us for the weekend, it's going to come at the cost of losing one of the biggest names we have, that being Chase Sexton. And dang it, man, I am so bummed. The first moto at Ironman with Jett and Chase battling, that was some of the best racing I've seen all year. Actually, in several years. But shortly after in Moto 2, fate does us dirty as he has a brake issue, totally goes cattywampus off the wall jump and eats crap. And we had everybody and their mother, brother, and cousin speculating on what the deal was, whether it was a front wheel issue, a front brake issue, or some other sort of conspiracy national. But yesterday, KTM came out and said it was actually a problem with the rear brake, not the front brake. They blamed it on debris, and who knows what really happened. There is quite a bit of sawdust and rocks and whatnot at Ironman. So with all that into consideration, you'd have to guess that with no back brake, Chase panicked and grabbed the front brake up the face. That would lead to the locked up front wheel. But regardless of what caused it, sucks to lose a top guy and sucks to lose somebody that could have brought the fight to Jett Lawrence. But it's moto, you'll have that on those bigger jobs. And another guy who's been having problems on the bigger jobs is Jett Reynolds. Man, I am so beyond bummed that this dude is hurt again. Another broken leg. And honestly, I don't think most of you have a clue of how good Jett Reynolds really is. He was the winningest mini bike racer at Loretta Lynn's, tons of talent, probably the fastest 85 rider I've ever seen in person, but it's just been injury after injury, and I really hope that he doesn't have to call it a career like this guy, Styles Robertson. Another massive bummer, the dude has had a trillion wrist surgeries, but the thing's foobar. And I just feel for the kid, so much potential, a career cut short, and he's an awesome dude. I had the privilege of going racing with Styles at a race in France back when he was 8 years old. He was awesome then, and he's awesome now. And he may be done racing, but hopefully he gets to stick around the sport and utilize all the info and experience that he's gotten over his years of racing. Even though he won't be on the gate, we love you, Styles. You're a legend. And now, jumping back forward to the action that's going to go down this weekend at Unadilla, the penultimate round, only 2 to go, and we may have some championships getting locked up early. In the 250 class, Hayden Deegan currently holds a 51-point advantage over Smokin' Joe Shimoda. And to lock up the championship, Hayden needs at least a 50-point gap because even if they tie, Hayden has more overall wins and he would own the tiebreaker. So at the most, Hayden Deegan can give up 1 point to Joe Shimoda at Unadilla and still take home the championship. But that's going to be a whole lot easier said than done. Shimoda's been ripping, he's been in full wasabi mode, and you know he's going to be motivated to take that championship down to the final round. You never know what could happen. Never say never. And then in the 450 class, even after last weekend's 1-lap penalty, Jett Lawrence still holds a 47-point advantage over his brother Hunter. And if Jett wants to lock it up early, all he's got to do is put 3 points between himself and Hunter, and he'll be the champ because as we know, he owns every tiebreaker there's ever been. And those scenarios are in regard to the Pro Motocross Championship points. But on top of that, we got battles in the Super Motocross playoff points. And today, I'm not really trying to focus on the people up front, but rather the people that are fighting for that top 20 to get a direct seed into the playoffs. And in the 250s, not quite the dogfight that we have in the 450 class. The final spot in 20th place is Dylan Schwartz with 159 points, and if he continues on his current run, he should be safe, and he might even overhaul the two people ahead of him, because 18th is RJ Hampshire, who is not racing the 250 class, and then 19th is Cole Davies. We may or may not see a return from him, but he's been losing points by the handful. And then behind Dylan Schwartz, outside of the top 20, the only guy that I could see maybe making a run and getting into that direct seeding is Lux Turner. He's got 32 points to make up on RJ Hampshire in 2 rounds, and if he shows up and shows out, maybe he can make it happen. But behind him, there's Colin Park, Jalik Swoll, and Ty Masterpool. They're a little bit further back, but they got no quit in them. And then in the 450 class, this is the one where we got a damn Battle Royale National. And on the bubble, in 18th, we got Justin Hill at 194 points, but he hasn't been racing the outdoors, and I don't think he has any plans to. 19th is Mitchell Harrison, who as of late has been coming on strong, and then it's Valentin Guillot, Cody Schock, and Hari Kulas, all within a 19-point spread. Then 23 and 24, you got the Betas, Oldenburg and Bloss, who have fallen out of the transfer spots, and then 25th is Benoit Paturel. At one point, he was looking like he was headed towards the top 20, but he's had a few rough races in a row, and now he's on the outside looking in. And this is going to be good. It should go down to the final moto because Justin Hill is just barely in range to possibly be in danger. Harrison's been doing everything he needs to do, and if he continues on the path he's been on, he'll be in. But then the battle for 20th, Valentin Guillot and Cody Schock are only 6 points apart, and if they both do good enough, maybe they could both get in if they overhaul Justin Hill, but they're going to have to do some of their best work of the season. And despite having a few guys that are going to be out and not racing the playoffs, they still only take the top 20 as being direct seeded. But as of now, it looks like the LCQs in both classes are set to take 4 riders rather than 2, because in the 250 class, you'll be missing Chance Hyman and RJ Hampshire, and in the 450 class, Colt 45 and El Hombre are out. So these guys are going to bring this thing down to the final moto, a lot of money on the line in the postseason, and I guess we'll see just how bad these guys want it. And now, jumping back into our previews for this weekend, we got a Thursday night national, only 20 minutes from Unadilla. The Moto Mission Night of Champions Pro Privateer race is going down on Thursday night, and kind of similar to PIR up by Washougal, a super cool opportunity for the privateers and the pros to make a little extra cash while they're making the trip to New York. I mean, come on guys, you're already in the area. Might as well get 2 birds stoned at once. You got no choice but to show up and make some cheddar. Racers race, baby. And for the pros, it says it's 100% payback, but a $6,000 bonus for first, second, and third place. Fastest to get paid and the fastest to get laid. But they got classes for everybody, from 50s to vets, and best part of all, I'm actually going to be there. I didn't even know this whenever I started making the video, but I'll be in attendance. We may or may not have media for Unadilla, so we're making the trip, and this Thursday night national is not an AMA race, so I can even hit you guys with the helmet cams. Stay tuned. And after checking the entry list, it looks like we got some new entries for the weekend for Unadilla. In the 250 class, Hunter Yoder's back on the list. He's been out for a few rounds. Then we've got South African Marcus Phelps, British racer Charlie Bit My Finger Heyman. Then we've got Blazer Cromaldi. Matisse Borromé is back for another race. And this was a random one. NGPC off-road racer Cole Zeller. Jace Allred's back. Brody Connolly and his teammate Kyle Webster appear to be in for the final 3 rounds. Amateur from Loretta's Cade Johnson's back to give it another shot. And of course, not sure what number he is, but Landon Gibson. And then in the 450s, we got Kyle Webster, Ken Roczen, HVAC extraordinaire Justin Rodbell, who I believe has an AC unit to install between motos. Ashton Aruda, Gage Stein, and Jack Rogers have all made the move to the 450 class as they usually race 250s. The heir of Welch's Fruit Snacks, Thomas Welch. Rashidi Harrison's back. We got the 555 of Lima. I don't know if that's a real name, but it's on the entry list. New York local Trevor Schmidt, and the 777 James Harrington. And last but not least, we'll get into our Unadilla track preview and our predictions. And as shown by this picturesque picture, Unadilla is sick. Definitely my favorite layout of the series. It's got the sky shot, it's nice and fast, and it's a really fun, flowy layout. But this is the part I don't really care for. Holy ruts, even Joey Diaz couldn't find a good line out there. Definitely some of the longest and gnarliest ruts of the season. You're in some of those ruts for at least 3 to 5 business days. But that's moto, it's Gnarls Barkley, and I can honestly respect the fact that they just leave their natural dirt, let it get gnarly, and don't mix a bunch of sawdust or sand into it. The All Natural National. Now let's get into the track preview with me and my absolutely destroyed knee from last year. Out of the world famous gravity cavity and over the finish line, a nice fun ski jump through the ruts into a tight right-hander, inside or outside, you pick, a little rise out of the corner, and then you got a nice step down, super steep landing down into this pit with a really steep bull corner. You can't tell on camera, but that's in the contract. Then a little bit of a rise and to the right around this tree, step down off this little drop off, and then pick your way through the ruts, a common theme at Unadilla, a little 90 to the right and a fun tabletop. Nice little floater, jump over the grass since the track is never used except for the National, a rutted 180 to the left, and then you got a little pop double out of the corner, the site of where Jason Anderson became a flagger a couple years ago. Another super small little pop double, and then drop down into this little right-handed sweeper. Ruts will be everywhere, and then you got a speed double into this big uphill with rollers and ruts all the way up it. This is what ended my day last year, so now we'll transition to another lap because I just hurt my knee again. But when you come in with no ligaments left, it's in the contract, but up to the top of the hill, super tight left-hander, pretty one-lined, and then you drop down, wide open down the hill into this speed double. And then the past few years, after you land this double, has been some of the gnarliest conditions I've ever seen. Ruts everywhere, bumps everywhere, and not a good line to be found. But then you got a 90 right, inside single, outside no single, option National, a little single, and then a step up the hill. Land and hold her WFO until you get to yet another check single to slow you down into this left-handed sweeper before you get to the best jump on the track and maybe the best jump on the circuit, the sky shot. I might have just hit that thing like a 2x4, but just wait, there's going to be some big whips. And then this section used to have a little bit of a dog leg, but they've opened it up, wide open WFO sweeper all the way to the top of the hill. Not going to lie, it's actually kind of scary fast. Then at the top of the hill, 90 right, and you drop down into the world famous Screw You, absolutely mentally steep. The camera does it zero justice. You can barely keep from going to Baltimore on the way back up. But a tabletop at the top, then you got this little turning hip tabletop, and one more tabletop just to make it a hat trick, a little speed double into a wide left-hander. You can either go tight inside or rail a berm around the outside. And then this step up, it always looks like corduroy pants. It's the smallest, sketchiest jump I've ever hit, wide open into the mechanics area, through the first corner and into turn 2, a little sweeper to the right. Another straightaway, I would say get through the gears, but I was on my 450 and I could have ridden from here to Florida in second gear. A 90 left, drop down and hit one last rutted step up, ruts everywhere into the final corner, another 90 to the left, drop down into gravity cavity and pick a line, pray that you make it, launch the finish line and hopefully don't loop out like my boy AP, and that's a lap around Unadilla. And last but not least, we'll get into the fun stuff, my predictions for the weekend, and in the 250 class, I hate to do it, but I'm not going out on a limb again. I'm going to go Hayden Deegan. I think he gets the win and wraps up the championship. In second, I'm going to go Wasabi Joe. He's pretty much been the number 2 guy all year, and I just don't really have any reason to think otherwise. And then in third, I'm going to go Garrett Marchbanks. The dude's good in the ruts. He was good here last year in his first race with Pro Circuit, and I'm really hoping that this dude holds on for his permanent number and gets to get number 39 in honor of Aiden Zing. Let's go Garrett Marchbanks. And then in the 450 class, no limb again. I am not a tree, but I'm going to go Jett Lawrence. This dude's ass is beyond chapped after the penalty from last weekend. He's pissed, and with no Chase Sexton, I think this is going to be one of the more dominant rides we've seen from Jett Lawrence. Then in second, I'm going with Hunter. He's been the second best guy most of the season, and like I said, no more Chase Sexton, so I think he gets the runner-up spot. And then in third, I'm going Eli Tomac. I'd love to pick the dude to do a little better and possibly bring the fight to Jett, but I don't think he likes Unadilla, and I think a podium would be a good weekend for ET. But that's just what I think. As always, let me know what y'all think in the comments. Let me know if you like my takes, if you agree, if you disagree, if I'm just a cooked unit, or anything in between. As always, you guys know we're here for all of it, but thanks again for watching, and I can't believe I'm saying this, but stay tuned for some content from Unadilla. Should be sick.